Charter received 2 bomb threats in 1 week. So tonight, Gabby Ballou spoke with authorities on what people can face if a false threat is made.
We hear about the threats or the situations nationally, and people are already in fear of that those things could happen because they can happen anywhere.
Captain C.J. Beck is the public information officer for West Monroe Police Department. He says those who make false bomb threats like the ones at Beekman Charter School this week can face a felony charge and up to 20 years in prison. If someone is injured or killed, charges will be upgraded.
It's okay to joke around appropriately, but that's not an appropriate way. And those consequences can not only affect them the rest of their lives, but it creates panic.
Beck says pranks like these can have a traumatic effect not only on a student body, but also the entire school system.
It really distracts from what they're supposed to be doing, which is learning and social development and things like that. Now they have to be concerned about their safety.
Beck says it's important that parents are involved in knowing what their children are doing and who they talk to, and let them know that if they see something, say something.
Our best tool is the students themselves, and then the parents that have contact with their students daily.
Beck says there are plenty of security measures in place at each school in order to keep the students, faculty, and staff safe.
Our schools are doing a really good job of securing our kids, and we're a part of that.
In West Monroe, Gabby Ballou, KNOE 8 News.